Hi, relatives. Hi, dear Luta. Hello, Kurt. Hi, dear Tuswecha, Kylie, Estrella. Hi, nephew. You look so wonderful, and I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah.
Should I go ahead and jump on in?
Maybe we give a couple minutes for people to roll in. Welcome, Dexter.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Good to
I
see
haven't
you.
seen your actual faces in
That's real. That's true. We've been masked up. Dear Estrella, did I say your name correctly?
Yeah, I'm gonna text him.
Hey, cool. Welcome, Lola. Welcome, Corinne.
Hi.
Hello. We're just going to wait 2 more minutes for folks to jump in and we'll get started. Hello, Michelle. Welcome.
Hello.
Ready, dear Peter?
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Strong. I'm co-owner and director of Racing Magpie here in Rapid City, Minaloosaha. On behalf of our entire team, I want to welcome you all to an exciting presentation that's part of our new program called Winter Camp. Tonight, it's featuring Layli LongSoldier presenting her talk, Cultivating a Relationship of Reciprocity, Artist to Art. At Racing Magpie, we're dedicated to elevating and amplifying Native and other artists and their communities through educational, cultural, and research programs, all in the Lakota spirit of being a good relative. As part of that being a good relative, this program will reimagine the Lakota Winter Camp model of problem solving and community building in today's world by examining the deeper reasons why Lakota people do things the way they do and why they interact with the universe around them the way they do. These events are free to the public, limited space available, and we're targeting Lakota community members as both presenters and attendees. As plants and trees focus their energy on building strength and growing from the roots during the winter, our community will join to strengthen and grow together each year through sharing and learning. A little bit of housekeeping real quick. We want to really thank our sponsors for their generosity for winter camp. We want to thank the South Dakota Humanities Council, which is an affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities, and then the National Endowment for the Humanities directly for their for a grant that we received from them, and the Bush Foundation. We will keep you all muted for the duration of the talk, unless you're asking a question or having a conversation. Please be comfortable as to whether you have your cameras on or off. We know that we're all in front of Zoom quite a bit every day, and we want to make sure you feel comfortable in your time here with Layli. During the session, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them through chat, and Golnessa, who's here sharing the screen with me now, will monitor those and share them with Layli when it's appropriate. And as always, you can reach out to us through our social media, Facebook, Instagram, visit our website all the time to see our new programs. Without any further delay, I want to introduce the incredible Layli LongSoldier, our friend here at Racing Magpie. Layli holds a BFA. Sorry, I'm doing my little, there we go. Layli holds a BFA from the Institute of American Indian Arts and an MFA from Bard College. Her poems have appeared in Poetry Magazine, the New York Times, the American Poet, the American Reader, the Kenyan Review Online, BOM, and elsewhere. She's the recipient of an NACF National Artist Fellowship, a Lannan Literary Fellowship, a Whiting Award, and was a finalist for the 2017 National Book Award. She's also received the 2018 Penn Gene Stein Award and the 2018 National Book Critics Circle Award. She's the author of Chromosomery from Q Avenue Press in 2010 and Whereas from Grey Wolf Press in 2017. She resides in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we're so honored and happy to have Layli back with us tonight. So I will give over this space to you.
Okay, hello. Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you. Of course, I'm like some of you, the Zoom platform is sometimes a little awkward, and sometimes I feel a little nervous here just because I can't see everyone and we're not able to necessarily feel each other's energy in the same space, but we're all doing our best, and I'm happy that at least, you know, during these difficult times that we can still come together in this way, and in the comfort of our own homes. So thank you for joining. Thank you for taking the time tonight to be here. And I also thank Racing Magpie, Peter Golnessa, for being here this evening and coordinating and arranging all of this. Okay, so this evening I'm going to actually share a lot of, this is going to be somewhat informal and casual in some ways. I don't have a typed out lecture to present, but I do have some ideas and some projects I want to share with you and maybe discuss the idea of creating relationship and reciprocity with our work, and working in a way that is comfortable to who we are and to our particular nature. Also, before I share anything, I want you to take everything with a grain of salt and realize that what I share is not a rule book. I'm going to share something of my experience, and I hope it inspires you maybe in ways to create your own path. And we have to recognize that we are all individual, we are all unique, We all have our own ways of walking in this world. So I'm confident that all of you are finding your own ways of working with art and sharing your work in the world. But I do want to share something of my experience and something of the ethics that I have developed along the way. And those ethics really reside in what Peter mentioned in the introduction, and that is the idea of creating relationship and creating reciprocity, which we know definitely in Lakota culture. I find with most of my Lakota students that they understand that immediately, because that is central to who we are, central to a lot of our ways of seeing the world. This idea of relationship and being a relative, not just to human beings, but to everything in creation. That there is a relationship and there are responsibilities and obligations we have with the world around us. That includes, as they say, plant people, animal people, and so on. Even, the land itself, caring for it. And that is a relationship also of reciprocity, where we take, we receive at times, but we also give back. So ideally, that is the way that we are operating in the world. We're walking in the world. And so I have come to believe that as an artist, as a writer, I work visually and I also write, that we can create this with our art as well. And that has really propelled or sort of shaped how my the decisions I make and the shape of my sort of career, and who I work with and how I work, what I agree to do, and what I maybe sometimes decline, what I don't participate in. And that is that I believe as artists, really, or as an artist myself, I want to get out of my work, I want to receive as much as I put in. In other words, I want to engage in work that helps me become a better person, if you will. I want to grow from the projects that I engage in. I want to, on the other side of it, to have learned something, or to have created more relationships, better relationships with my community or with my family, or even particular issues or subjects. And the reason this is important, and I'm sort of sharing this with you, is because we do live in America. And we know that much of the foundation of the way that things are conducted here, it operates on ideas of capitalism, of production, of making and receiving some kind of profit. Usually it's monetary profit, right? And we can't help the fact that we do need to make a living, right? So I'm completely aware of that too. As a mother, as an artist, I do need to pay for rent, and I have to put food on the table and provide for my daughter. So that's very real. But the trap that we can get into, and which I try very hard to avoid, is being so concerned with the monetary aspect of my work, meeting my financial needs, being so concerned with that, or maybe worried, that I agree to things where I just begin making work for the sake of making work, or I make work for the sake of meeting a deadline. And what happens is I'm pushing out this work, but I'm not necessarily growing. I'm not necessarily becoming a better relative. I'm not a better community member. I'm not changing. And that's worrisome. I want to change. I want to evolve. I want to mature. I want to, as I already said, I keep saying, I want to become a better person as I work. And, so it's not to say I'm such a good person, but just that's the goal primarily, and working in that way, I have been very grateful that somehow the magical glitter, the stardust comes down, and I am able to meet my needs. Of course, I don't have my sight as far as lifestyle or income. I don't have my sights set on becoming a wealthy person. As long as I have food on the table and I have a roof over my head and basic needs are met with the family, I'm very grateful and very happy. So it has worked out that so far, knock on wood, it's worked out for me to be able to agree to participate in certain projects, and along the way, also in return, this thing of reciprocity, I have been able to meet my needs and take care of my daughter and so on. So I'm very grateful for that. One of the things I wanted to give you an example also of understanding, having some trust in knowing ourselves and the way that we work in the world and creating this kind of reciprocity is I wanted to know, when Peter introduced me, he listed from my biography, my bio, all of the kind of like accolades or awards or publications I've had. And I always get a kick out of that, as a way to introduce oneself, right? Because really, in essence, I'm just me. And, those things are sort of, they came along the way, but they don't define who I am. But one of the things I did want to share, maybe I like to share this sometimes with young people as encouragement, but it's not a rule. So don't take this as a rule for you to follow. It's just as encouragement to tell you about myself. So one thing I'd like to tell people about is like my path for publication. When I had a book, I published a book a few years ago titled Whereas, and it was a finalist for the National Book Awards, and it received some other, it received a bit of attention. But I want to say that all of it is sort of like, I myself am often surprised, because when I wrote that book, I kind of felt like it was a message in a bottle. I had no idea how it would be received. All I knew is it really was like I put these poems in a bottle and threw it out into the ocean, and I didn't know what shore it would reach, who would read it, or what have you. And that really has been a big part of the way that I have written and published things. So as encouragement, I was going to tell this little story about when I was in undergrad, when I was first learning, first studying poetry, first learning to write. One semester, I had one of the professors, a faculty member, came into the room. I remember I was in the writing lab, and he said, oh, I wanted to tell you there's this call for entries for Native students to send in some poems to this journal. And he said, I think that, your work would be a really good fit. So he said, you should give it a try. The deadline is whatever, blah, blah, blah. And maybe work on some of your poems and send them in, give it a try. So I was like, oh, okay. And I was brand new to, this whole thing of presses and journals and so on. So I stayed up like all night, several nights. I like worked really hard on these pieces. I think I sent in like 3. I worked really, really hard on them. And the deadline came, and I sent in my work and sent it with a little prayer. I was just like, okay, I was really trying to believe in these pieces. And then a few weeks went by, maybe a few weeks or a month, and I got an email back, and it was a rejection. And I remember I was at school when I opened that email, and they had declined to publish my poems. This was the first time I had ever sent things in. And I was so hurt and sad and stunned by that email. And I remember I was sitting again in the writing lab. This was at the Institute of American Indian Arts. And I was sitting there by myself. And I don't think anyone saw me, but I sat at the computer and cried. I was really sad because I worked so hard. And what's funny is that day, now again, don't take this as a rule for you to follow, please don't. But it's about myself, about my nature and my way of working. That day, because I cried so much, I realized I did not have the kind of wherewithal, the stamina like other people do. I was too sensitive, and I decided I would never send my work someplace on just a cold submission. I would only go where I'm invited. That is the way that I walk in the world. I go places where I'm asked. I go places where I'm welcomed and where I'm invited. And so, and you could say that with in any way. I do that with friendships or, visiting people's houses. I don't just go and barge in or what have you. So, I like to be welcome. And so I like my poems to, I like to feel comfortable that I'm welcomed in that way. After that, I have never sent my work to cold submissions. I've only sent my work to people who have asked me. Now, again, this is not a rule for anyone, because I know that people, I have good friends who are very different from me. They are very comfortable with rejection letters. They send their work out all the time, and they'll send a poem to several different journals at one time, and they're completely okay with it. They accept that it's going to be accepted sometimes and sometimes not. And so I love that, and I love that attitude, and it works for them. But I'm like super sensitive, so I had to find my own way in the world. And what is funny is that for some reason, again, knock on wood, somehow it has been okay. Somehow the stardust fell down, and it worked out that along and along, I got invitations to send something, and doors have opened. at the right time, at the right pace. And it was a way that worked for who I am in this world. So I just want to encourage you, maybe also part of this lecture is to, it's to understand yourself and be comfortable. At least for me, that, you know, it did work, that doors have opened in ways that suited my nature, like who I am as a person. But we are also wanting to talk about creating this thing of reciprocity with our artwork. So on that note, I wanted to maybe move into sharing some projects. As I said, I did write this book titled Whereas, but I also work visually. So I wanted to share some of those visual projects, and most of the time those projects also involve writing, excuse me, or text. So I want to encourage you, if you guys are listening, I don't even know if anyone's listening now, I hope you are, but if you are listening, please, if there's, oh, I see a thumbs up, thank you so much. If you are listening, and if at any point you want to ask a question about the slide I'm showing or the artwork, please go ahead and type it, and then we can take a moment to address your question. I mean, that's one thing I miss from the classroom or from being with people, is that I like to be able to engage, you know, while I'm talking. So please feel free to jump in. Okay, what I'm going to try to do here is share screen, and let's see if this works out. All right, can you guys see that? Yeah? Okay, great. And I'm going to do slideshow view. Now, this is going to take a while. I have a number of projects to share. And I'm going back to one of my earlier projects titled Buffalo Book. And Peter actually might remember this because he was working at the Heritage Center at Red Cloud when I brought this work in. And I think Mary had invited me to participate in a show titled Pte Oyate. And that was a show, sort of the theme was to think about our relationship as a people with buffalo. So I made a project to participate in that. There were, I can't remember how many other artists, I want to say 5, 6, 7 artists participating. Okay, so this is sort of a view of the whole thing. And what you see is right here is a full-size dress form that I like to use accessible materials. So I like to use a lot of materials that you can buy at a hardware store. And at the time I used to live out on the Navajo Nation. So going to an art supply store with fancy supplies was kind of hard. So the best we had was Ace Hardware over in Chinle. So I would go over there and find things. So this dress form underneath is made out of chicken wire. The black quote buffalo robe, the robe on top is a black window screen. And then these buffalo are made out of a silver window screen. All of it is sewn together with spools of copper wire. You can also buy at the hardware store. And then I made grass out of pieces of metal. I think I found at the hardware store too, and so on. The only thing that might be specialty items is underneath The buffaloes, you'll see there's text. If you can see, I have written text and put that inside each buffalo. And so the clear, or the, I forgot the name of that kind of paper. Peter, do you know what that paper is called? It's not vellum, but anyway, it's a very thin, sheer kind of paper. And so that I did have to find at an art supply store. I wanted to share this because this was an early project I did that was exhibited at the Heritage Center. And it was also a project I felt really proud of. What I felt most proud of, actually the poems that I have, or the writing inside the buffaloes is not, I mean, it's interesting, I guess. I'm not as like excited about that. I actually am working right now to completely revise all of that writing. I felt like it could be better. So I want to revise all of it. But what I'm most proud of, if you can see here down the center of this, of the buffalo robe, can you guys see those little like pieces of paper hanging? It's what I call the spine inside the dress form. That is a list of names in our community. And all of those names have the word bull in them. And what I did to compile those names is I called a bunch of relatives as well as a fellow Lakota writer. And I got on the phone and I asked people if they could help me compile a list of family names in our community with the word bull. And the reason is because in our culture, when you see bull, it is not a reference to the cow. It is a reference to buffalo. And that relationship is very old. I want to even say ancient, you know, and it shows the connection that we have to the buffalo as our first relatives, right? So they are considered, we emerged, it's part of our creation story. They are our relatives, our first relatives. So here's a closer look at one of the little buffaloes there. Don't look at the writing, I'm not proud of it. But there's the spine. There we go. On the center of that. And here's a list of family names. So, and actually the list was much longer. So this is kind of and it's only because I couldn't fit all of them inside the buffalo robe. It hung down as far as it could go. But here you see Sitting Bull, of course, Bullman, Black Bull, Left Hand Bull, Jumping Bull, Three Bulls, Short Bull, Crazy Bull, Two Bulls, Bull Child, Medicine Bull, Brown Bull, Thunder Bull, Bull Chief, Tall Bull, Wallowing Bull, Red Bull, Yellow Bull, Spotted Bull, Bad Heart Bull, Plain Bull, Bull Bear, White Bull, Eagle Bull. So, and that in itself, I think, is gorgeous. I mean, it works almost as poetry itself. You know, our family names, our given names, our language is full of imagery, and which is so, I mean, suited to poetry anyway. I think Peter was messaging me about that earlier today. In many ways, how our language is so poetic in the way that we phrase things, but you see even in our names. And so what I wanted, the reason I'm sharing some of this, I started with this, is this was a wonderful example of something where I came out on the other side of this project, and there was a kind of reward. I had, I would say, strengthened my relationship and appreciation for our community, our history, an understanding of our relationship to buffalo. The conversations I had with relatives and friends to compile this list, those conversations were really beautiful. And so, you know, it really was not, in the end, had nothing to do with money. In fact, I don't think, maybe I did make money from that. I don't know if I did. I didn't sell the piece. Oh, that's the other problem with some of my work, because I'm all into, I just want to feel good, right? So a lot of my work is like too big. I mean, nobody's gonna walk in. See, this is almost, this is five and a half feet tall here. This buffalo measures around 4.5 feet, some 4 feet, 5 feet tall, something like that. So all together, and then it goes down the wall and down the floor and up the back. This is not something that someone would buy for their home. They're not, there's nowhere to put it. You know, it's not like a painting that they can hang on the wall or what have you. So I do engage a lot of these projects. I spend a lot of time. Again, this is not a rule for all of you to follow. It's just, I'm just sharing. But I'm not thinking about, oh, is this something that someone can buy and put on their wall? So a lot of these projects, I actually now have this back. I have it in my possession, and I'm going to revise it, rework it. So, and sometimes I end up donating things because I'm like, oh, you guys can just have it. I don't know. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to move into whereas I apologize. Can you give me 1 second? Someone was, hold on 1 second. Let's see.
I feel compelled to read the full title of Layli's talk while she's busy.
Okay.
It's Cultivating a Relationship of Reciprocity, Artist to Art, Developing Creative Ethics to Enrich Personal and Community Growth, and thereby refusing the capitalistic pull to become art machines. And I mess with that last part heavy, so I just wanted to say it while we were waiting.
Thank you. Yeah, we don't want to become art machines. That's the thing. And it can happen to you. It can happen very easily and very quickly. Because as I mentioned, please forgive me. I mean, this is very biased opinion. I realize not everyone would agree with me, I'm sure. But it can happen because we do live in America. We live in the United States, where, you know, if you let them, like the way they do with cows, hooking up the machine and sucking them dry from milk, you know, day in and day out, that can happen to you as an artist. You know, people will take as much as you give and as much as you agree to. They'll take it. And so it is really up to us to maybe along the way, maybe even early on, to create a sense of ethics for how we conduct ourselves, how we practice our art, what we agree to, where we agree to have our art shown. On that note, I have to say, this is hilarious. I have recently realized that I do work visually. I mostly write. That's what I studied, but I do work visually. It has only been Mary Bordeaux, Peter's wife, who's ever gotten me to really make anything visually and exhibit it. Because she's really the only person that has things that I'm interested in, which is funny. And I have had offers at other places, you know, to do things. And I don't know, I'm always like, well, you know, I'll think about it, but I end up kind of being busy with other things. But somehow it always ends up being like with Mary that she'll present certain subjects and ideas that are where I feel where I really bust it out for her, you know, because I feel like it's important to my growth. And also it usually involves community in a way that is really rewarding. So let's see here. Oopsie. Okay. I'm so sorry. The reason I was distracted with my phone is my daughter was supposed to be on a Zoom meeting. She's involved in a mural project, and the people were calling saying, where is she at? And so she finally got on. So I apologize for that, but that's all taken care of. Okay, moving on. Okay, so I'm going to share another project also involving Mary, involving Heritage Center. When I was writing this book, the second half of this book is a response to the National Apology to Native Americans. So I wrote 28 poems responding to that apology to Native Americans. It was signed in December 2009 by Barack Obama. Around 2010, 2011, I started writing some poems to respond to that document and the apology. I had a lot of issues with it. And somewhere along the way, I thought it would be interesting maybe to also hear from our community, from Lakota community, and see how other people respond to this document and to this gesture. And it was really important, I think really wonderful, once again, a project that I got just as much out of it as I put into it. Because at the end of the project, I realized, you know, there were times when I was like, am I being oversensitive? Am I, you know, being negative, if you will, pessimistic? But I found a lot of responses from the community mirrored some of my own feelings towards that congressional document, that apology. So what I did was I contacted Mary and I think Peter, both of you. And I asked at first if you knew of any place that might be willing to host an installation to hear from our community. And immediately they wrote back and said they'd be interested, the Heritage Center would be. So what we did was, and I was so grateful for that. So it was very exciting, and Mary and Peter arranged for a space inside the Heritage Center. And you can see that here, the way the space was set up, there's 3 walls. There's a wall on the left, one in the back, and one on the right. There's a column in the middle towards the front. And what we did was we projected 3 sections of that national apology onto each wall. And then we got a cart. Can you see at the bottom here? We got a cart of anything we could think of. Acrylics, paintbrushes, markers, graphite, pastels, you name it. And we got all of these materials, put it on a cart in front. We also photocopied that apology, and we invited people to come and respond and interact with that text on the wall for themselves, you know, just to participate. So it was a, what is the word? Interactive. It was an interactive installation. So this was like the first few days that it opened. So you can see the walls are still a little bare, but these are some young people from Red Cloud. And you can see here, for example, this young person is writing, apologize to my or our grandparents. This is one of my favorite in the yellow text. This is probably my favorite of all time. I saw a couple, I want to say 3, it might have been 2 or 3 young girls crouched in the corner over there doing something on their own. And so they were busy talking amongst each other. And when they got up, this is what they had. If you're so sorry, give us back the Black Hills. Which I thought was brilliant, because in actuality, that's what it all comes down to. Agreements. You're apologizing for broken agreements. All you have to do, maybe, instead of saying I'm sorry, is to honor those agreements. Problem would be solved, right? Honor those agreements, so many things would change. Our trust would be restored. I don't know, a lot would change. So I love that. That was amazing. Part of this event too was my grandma Sha, my grandma Mabel. She came to also to the exhibit, and she has passed on now. So she's not with us anymore, but it was such a blessing to have Grandma Sha come and visit. And I remember she wanted coffee, so we gave her coffee, and it was too strong, and we had to water it down for her. And but it meant so much to have her there. And this is another example maybe of getting as much out of our work as we put into it, you know, to have our family, our relatives, our grandparents appreciate and care for us when we're doing things in the community. Okay. I don't know how we're doing on time. Let's see here. Okay, we're okay. All right. I wonder if you guys actually, before I move in to the next project, does anyone have any questions so far about Buffalo Book or the Whereas We Respond? Anything? Okay, I'm gonna move on. Alrighty, what I appreciate is that I know probably a lot of you are familiar with Lakota culture, many of the participants, so I don't have, there's some things I don't have to explain as much. So I think maybe a lot of you are gonna recognize this here in the middle. This was for a project, an exhibit, once again, organized by Mary. Oh my God, I really need to diversify my my exhibits, but what can I do? I wasn't even doing it on purpose. I just realized that recently. I was like, Mary's the only one who can get me working. But once again, this was for an exhibit titled Midakoye Oyasin. And so many of you already know that means roughly like we are all related or all my relatives. And we hear this phrase a lot, especially in public gatherings. A lot of times you'll hear that speakers will close their remarks sometimes with this phrase, or at other gatherings, you know, like when there's a prayer or what have you, it'll conclude with that. So Mary invited me to participate in this show. She and her sister Clementine had been talking about this phrase. And one of the things that interested them, or maybe even concerned them, is that this phrase has been adopted and is used a lot by people who are not necessarily Lakota. And so a lot of times, sometimes it's used maybe in good spirit, but it's also used to create a kind of familiarity, easy familiarity, as they say, without necessarily understanding what it means in the larger context of Lakota culture and philosophy. And what that really means to consider someone your relative, and it's not to be taken lightly. And so if you do understand others as your relative, then you conduct yourself as such, and you take care of each other as such, and you're careful with those relationships, you know. And we all make mistakes, but we do our best, right? We try. So they wanted to hold this exhibit and invited me to think about this subject and to make something. So what I did, what happened was, you see this here, you guys recognize this. I hope maybe some of you are nodding your head, I hope. So this is like a star quilt. This is a pattern, a star quilt pattern. And it so happened that a while, like sometime before this, before Mary invited me, one of my cousins gave me a star quilt pattern. And she was like, oh, here, I have this extra pattern. And she gave it to me. And I was like, oh, you know, thank you. I was happy to receive it. But also, I don't sew. So I was just like, oh, okay. You know, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I like it. So brought it home, and it was actually sitting in on my desk, in my desk area. And it was just sitting there, and it kept calling my attention for some reason. And then when Mary invited me, suddenly, I don't know, it clicked. All of it clicked in place. I said, oh my goodness, you know, maybe this is a time when I could use this pattern. And what I did, I don't sew. And as you already know, I work with other materials, like things I can get at the hardware store. So what I did was I took that star quilt pattern and I expanded the diamonds to 1 foot long each. And so as you see here, this isn't the actual pattern. I just grabbed this from the internet. Mine was a little bit different. But you'll see the star is basically 8 sections, right? So what I did was I expanded the diamonds to 1 foot long. And then I wrote a poem for each section. And then what I did was I took those poems and I took the pieces to a laser cutter, and they laser cut the text into the diamonds. So that those little white spaces those are actually words that the laser cutter guy texted in. These up here are it's from an actual photograph of a buffalo hoof in the mud. And I took also that photograph to the laser cutter, and he cut buffalo hoofs out up here. So that's what that design is. And up here is a little buffalo. But to write those poems, what I did was, as I said, Clementine was also an artist in this exhibit. And she studied film, documentary film. And what she did, she and Mary both, they interviewed 6 women in our community, Lakota women, who are speakers of Lakota language. And they're also all educators, which is an interesting connection. So they're all women, all educators, and all speakers of our language. And they asked them to share what they understand or what they know about Midakuye Oyasin, that philosophy and the history of that. So as Clementine collected these sound clips, she sent them to me. And I sat down and I listened to them. I spent hours listening and taking notes. And using those notes and a kind of inspiration, I didn't use it word for word, but I sat with what I listened to and I made these poems. I made 8 poems. And then we laser cut them into these sections. And in the end, this is what the star quilt looked like. So this is this little, it's hard to tell, this section is actually 6 feet long. It's on my kitchen table. And when I assembled them all together, these stars measure 12 feet high, approximately 12 feet high by 12 feet wide. And Peter has taken these down and put them up many times. So yeah, it's quite a process to assemble them. And then you see here, this silver, once again, is a window screen and sewn together with copper wire. So that serves as kind of the quote fabric that you would have in a star quilt. But and this material is cotton paper. I ordered paper from India, so it's very heavy, heavyweight paper. And over here is another star, and that is based on a short story by Zint Kala Shah, written by Zint Kala Shah. And that isn't laser cut, that's written text. And that's where I did some stencil work, you'll see. The title of this star quilt is Mosquitoes, because mosquitoes are also our relatives in Lakota philosophy. Like it or not, yes, they are our relatives. And I bet you some of you even know some family members who are like mosquitoes, right? And it doesn't matter. They're there. They just exist. And we have to make peace with them. We have to accept people as they are, even if they're a little bothersome sometimes. They don't have to ruin our whole picnic, right? So we honor them, and we acknowledge everybody, even the mosquitoes, for who they are and what they offer. These are some pieces by Mary. She made these sculptures. It was in the exhibit. And this is, you recognize, I'm sure, this is a buffalo skull. This is a stone. And she suspended them from the ceiling. And then visitors can come and put their heads inside here. Look at, there they are. It was super fun. That's what I love about working with Mary and Clementine, is they have a kind of, sometimes a kind of like whimsical or playful way of working, enjoyable. That's the other thing I like. I like to enjoy my work. So that's something I get out of it, is joy and pleasure and happiness. Here's a porcupine that Mary made. And what she did was she put speakers inside these pieces, or little screens. Over here inside these, she put little like screens, digital screens with interviews from community members. So you could put it on your head. You could smell sage, or you could smell sweetgrass, and you could watch one of our community members tell you about being a good relative. Isn't that funny? It's so cool. And over here, this had a little speaker, and the porcupine, if you come up close and listen, porcupine will also tell you what it is to be a good relative in Lakota way. So I love that. I mean, like, wow. This is inside the stone, and you can see Mary sewed some sweetgrass, some braids in there. And that's one of the screens. I think that might be, is that Jace? Yeah, she's speaking there, sharing a little bit. There we are, there's Mary, Clementine, me. I wanted to dress up for the opening, but I ran out of time, so I was just in my t-shirt, like, oh well. And here's one of the pieces to give you an example. I'm going to read one of these pieces, just so you can experience it. Yeah. And I'm going to have to reduce your screen here so I can see the poem. So one thing I'll also mention, excuse me, is that the form, I made these pieces at the top of the diamond, you know, laser cut into that black quilt. I made them so that the reader, the viewer, could come and they could create their own poems. So if you start at the top, you can weave your way down, and you can go in any combination. You can go in maybe 10 or 12 combinations, I'm thinking, and make a different poem each time. And so, yeah, so I'm going to share, I think I'll just read this piece as an example. Okay. Here we go. As we embrace the future, we work to understand the grief. We shift into light across our faces. As we embrace the present, we struggle to find the grief. We shift into light across our faces. As we resist the present, we struggle to unbraid the grief we wield into light across our faces. As we resist the past, we begin to accept the grief we wield as ash across our faces. As we resist the past, we fail to question the grief we bury as ash across our faces. So that's just one example of the poems. And again, like this was inspired by the interviews that Clementine sent to me with our community members. And one of the community members, I can't remember, I think it might have been Vi, who talked about grief and the necessity of dealing with grief, our grief and our anger that we carry with us, historical grief, and how necessary it is to address that so that we can be good relatives, right? So that we can be balanced, emotionally healthy, you know, and be there for others. But when we have a lot of stuff inside that we're not attending to, we're just stuffing it down, it can sometimes get in the way of how well we're able to be there for others, right? This is another one that was about intuition, of all things, very beautiful. I'll just share this little note. One of the speakers talked about, I had never heard anyone talk about intuition in this way. And she said, I've always heard about the importance of intuition, especially in our culture, but I never heard anyone say it like this. She said something like, as Lakota people, it is our responsibility. It's our responsibility to strengthen and develop our intuition, because this helps us be a good relative. Because someone we know, a friend, a family member, can be suffering, and we feel it, we know it intuitively, right? You can go to their front door and you can say, how are you doing? Check in on them. Even if they show you a happy face, you know intuitively that maybe they need you, they need something, right? And so this is related to being, to midakoye oyasin, to creating relationship and being a good relative to others. So that was like so mind-blowing, what this person said. I mean, it just changed everything. And so it propelled me into a whole poem about this idea. This also contains some aspects of learning to speak our language, to speak my tongue. Learning, that is also a important part, you know, speaking our language and so on. So I was meditating on a few things at the same time. So I'm just going to scroll forward. This was one about our anger. This one actually was inspired by a discussion about our dictionaries, some of the politics, some of the history that goes into collecting our language, and then who owns it, copyrights, distribution, dialects, who determines what goes in the book and what doesn't, and so on. So that was wonderful to listen to, because I think it was Jace talking. I can't remember, but anyway, they were affirming a lot of things I had been told by my own family, my family members. And so I was like, oh, okay, so we're not the only ones, or it's not just my family who has experienced this. Okay, so that's a kind of overview of that project. Quickly, this is Zint Kala Shah. I referred to Zint Kala Shah, the short story. I used her short story text from her short story to make 8 poems for that multicolored piece, the mosquitoes piece. And Zintkala Shah was one of the earliest Dakota writers, and also obviously she was a woman, to publish poetry and prose, to publish it in the U.S. as, you know, an American writer. So I consider her like a literary ancestor, if you will. So in a way, she is also a relative. And those are some of the poems that I have since been working. I've been working on those slowly, developing them.
Dear Layli, I don't know if because you're showing that you're seeing the chat is just full of a lot of love and joy and gratitude and excitement. I wanted to share that with you.
Oh, cool. I can't see my chat bar. So, well, that's great. Thank you guys. Thank you. I'm glad. I feel like I'm talking out. Actually, I just feel like I'm talking to Peter and Golnessa's heads and I can't see anybody.
Lots of love and affirmation in the chat.
Oh, how beautiful. Well, thank you guys. If you like, I can, let me see how we're doing on time. Oh, shoot. Excuse me. Oh, we're doing okay on time. Okay, so I have, yeah, maybe I'll read one of these pieces and then I'll show another project, but just for fun. So again, this was taken from a short story titled The Widespread Enigma Concerning Blue Star Woman. So you guys can find that online, actually, if you Google that, that title. It is available online, so you can read that. What I found, what I did with this short story is I separated out parts of speech, verbs, adjectives, nouns, dialogue, and so on. And what I found that was incredible, kind of miraculous, is that many of the things that Zintkala Shah was writing about during her time, late 1800s, early 1900s, concerning identity, native identity, enrollment, land rights, and resistance. All of those things, when I stripped away the particulars of the story and I separated out some of those parts of speech, I realized we were using the same language today in 2020, 2019, 2020, the same language to talk about those things, which was really interesting to me, especially concerning aspects of identity, which this story concerns. The main character is Blue Star Woman who was orphaned, and there's issues of what rights she should have, if she, you know, who her parents were, who her family was, issues of belonging. And then towards the end of the story, there are issues of resistance, community resistance. It's the same language. And I realized now this work is really concerning, I think, issues that we talk about within the Native community. So this is another aspect of work. We don't always have to make work that, I want to say, outsiders or others are necessarily interested in or that they understand. We can also address issues, you know, within our community. And so what I found is, like, we know that issues of enrollment and rights and all of that, a lot of it can be very painful and very complicated. And I realized that pain is very old. It's nothing new. It's not new. It goes way back. And so I think as a poet, like, it was really exciting and really wonderful. That was a reward I got from that project, to realize, okay, this is old stuff, and let's look at it. Let's just look at what's happening to us, or what what we've been living under, you know. So I'm just going to read one of those pieces. Okay. Here we go. The fact was, circumstances of her early childhood were matters of dispute, as the sharpened names from her tribe boiled like smoke-blackened coffee, fire between her and her heritage. The fact was, circumstances of her family tree were unrecorded as the speared names from her tribe boiled like smoke-blackened coffee, fire between her and her heritage. The fact was, circumstances of her family tree were contradictory as the lifted names of her memories boiled like smoke-blackened coffee, fire between her and her heritage. The fact was, verbal reports about her family tree were contradictory as the lifted names of her memories boiled like the hot breads sing, fire between her and her heritage. The fact was, verbal reports about old teachings were contradictory as the added names of her memories boiled like the hot breads sing, fire between her and her heritage. The fact was, verbal reports about old teachings were of far greater importance as the roused names of the dead boiled like the hot breads sing, fire between her and her heritage. Woo. Okay, I do actually have one more project to share, but before I move on, I wonder if there's any, did you guys have any questions about that project? Or we can save questions for the very end or whatever works.
More affirmations and appreciation in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Yay. Yeah, I have two more projects, but I'm actually just going to share the most recent one.
Dear Layli, there's one question that just popped up.
Okay.
It's from dear Kylie, and Kylie is asking, how did you come about this poetry style?
When you say style, do you mean form? The shape?
Yes.
Yes. So, as I mentioned, this form is a result of working with the star quilt. So I made the text so that it could go into each diamond of the quilt. And so that visually, because you remember this started as a visual piece, it's visual and text combined, so that the viewer could start at the top, stand in front of that 12-foot star and work their way down and create. I wanted it to be interactive. I wanted them to be able to create their own poem as they move their way down. So this form came from that. And I'm glad you asked that question, actually, because it is this relates to something that I often like to encourage, especially Native students, as they work in poetry and with writing. And this is what I want you to think about. So when you go into an academic setting, like if you study writing in college or even at a master's program or what have you, oftentimes, most of the time, you will learn, the classics, the Western classics, contemporary forms, and all of this. And you'll learn more like traditional, formal forms, right? That are, easily recognized often. So we have the pantoum or the sestina or what have you. You see it right away. You know what it is, and you learn how to do that. I like to encourage our Native students to okay, take it as it comes. You can. There's no harm in learning those things, but I also think there is so much to draw upon in our own culture and in our own art practices. And there's thousands of years of art practices, in our cultures that we can turn to and borrow from. Now, granted, if you want to get technical, the star quilting is a more contemporary art form. I know, I acknowledge that. However, we should also understand that this is something that these days, the quilt is given among our relatives for many, many different kinds of occasions. And it's something that is quickly recognizable, And so using that, recognizing that, hey, this is a symbol, this is a shape. The quilt, the star quilt, is something that people quickly connect with and engage with. And as a writer, I wanted to do something that as a way to connect with our community. I didn't want to just have words on a page. I wanted to visually engage them. And so I borrowed that from our I used that intentionally. So I encourage that also. Be inventive and borrow from your own communities. And there's so many possibilities, So thank you for asking that question about form. All right, I'm going to move on to one last project. I feel like my head is coming off of my body here. Zooming through about a decade of work here. I'm going to move to the more recent one. Oh, this was from a Lakota language and poetry project we just had this weekend, but I'm too tired. I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about something fun. Okay, here we go. That was actually fun, but visually exciting. I wanted to share this with you. I'll close with this project. And again, this is about relationship. The point is creating relationship, creating this thing of reciprocity, getting something, as much out of our work as we put into it, and coming out on the other side feeling like a richer, a happier, better person. All right, so I'm going to share what I call the Tumbleweeds Project. This also involved poetry. What I'm going to share is the visual aspect tonight. I was asked by a journal to submit some work a few months ago, or a month or two ago, something like that. And as you know, we're deep in the pandemic. It has been a very difficult time for many of us, most of us, with lockdown. I'm a mom, and so my daughter is 14 and she has to do school online all day. She doesn't get to be with friends, or, do, you guys are in the same boat, so I probably don't need to explain. It's been very difficult mentally and emotionally as well. So I was asked to submit work, and honestly, I was not in a place where I could even, I was like, oh man, I'm feeling heavy. I'm feeling low. So all I could think is I really wanted to do something that created energy. I wanted to release, feel happy. I wanted to feel happy. That's what I wanted. And I wanted to do something that involved my daughter, because she's also feeling the effects of the pandemic. So I said, I want to collaborate with my daughter because, yeah, we need it. It's like life or death right now. Like I needed work that was medicine, if you will. So I had this crazy thing for years. Whenever I live in the Southwest, you guys, I live in Santa Fe. So down here in the Southwest, we have a lot of tumbleweeds, like all over. If you drive out of city limits, you'll start to see the tumbleweeds. For whatever reason, all these years, whenever I see a tumbleweed, I've always wanted to put it on my head as a hat. I don't know why, and that's my association. I've always thought, wouldn't it be so fun to wear one of those? They're so regal. They're so nothing, but they're so fantastic at the same time, right? They're so common and ignored, but they're so just, I love them. They're like these huge thorny crowns, So I did that. I said, Bubba, let's go get some tumbleweeds. We went out, we had these tumbleweeds, and we made hats out of them. And then we went around Santa Fe and we took pictures in various locations. So this right here is a monument that was just taken down forcibly. Yeah, by a number of activists, native and non-native people in the area. This obelisk, it's called an obelisk, is in the middle of the Santa Fe Plaza. And the words in this like white area, it was celebrating the massacre of savage Indians, and they use the word savage in that text. Some years ago, I can't remember if it was, I want to say the 80s or something, there was a native guy. This guy came on his own, on his own volition, his own idea. He put on a construction outfit, and he just went on up to that obelisk, and nobody questioned him. And he acted like a construction worker, and he chiseled out the word savage. He had it. He was sick of it. He was sick of seeing it. So he chiseled, nobody said anything, and they didn't realize what he had done until until he left. But still, all these years later, this monument was still there with the chiseled out word savage. Now, we know in poetry, this is called a form of erasure. And sometimes when you erase text, you can actually call more attention to it. There's a form of poetry called erasure poetry. And you actually can, in a way, by erasing something, it creates a question mark in the reader's mind. What was there in the first place? So that remains the unanswered question, the pursuable question after reading it. And so I think his gesture was important. I love it. But I think the whole thing just needed to come down. And so it did come down recently. I wish I had pictures of it. But this was on, what day was it? Columbus Day? Indigenous Day? So, but we did this project right before that, like I didn't know it was going to come down. So my daughter and I, this is my daughter Chance, and we went and stood in front of the obelisk. We also went to the car wash. We were washing our car with our tumbleweeds. And we went to a place called Camel Rock over here. What I love is the similarity in form. You see Camel Rock and then our hats. So that was super fun. And in the process, I'm sorry, I should have included a picture of the two people photographing us. And that was Michaela Carpio Patton and Bodera Joe. So they're two younger. Michaela is Lakota, she's Oglala, and Bodera is Dene, Navajo. It just happens that Chance is half Dene, half Lakota. Or I mean, her dad is Dene and I'm Lakota. So we had like a team of like Lakota Dene team. I don't know what, it was funny. Anyway, so in the process of doing that project, I got to know Michaela and Bodera a little better. I'm getting older now, so I'm kind of like an auntie. So I got to spend time with, and I wouldn't say mentor them, but just create relationship with these beautiful, young, really intelligent young artists, native artists in our area. So on the other side of that, this project created joy. It helped lift our spirits. It helped lift my daughter's spirit a lot, you know, to do this and go around and take pictures with tumbleweeds. And it helped create relationship with other young artists in the area. And so on the other end of that, I was really grateful to have done that. And I did write some poems to go with this. I'm not going to share those poems right now, but I'm just sharing the tumbleweed part. I'm going to conclude the presentation there and maybe ask anyone if we can chat or share thoughts or any questions or what have you.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm a teacher and I teach down here at Crazy Horse School.
Mhm.
And how would you encourage kids to go into art or into the arts? We have so many of our young people are wonderful artists, and you know, once they get out of school, they don't pursue it. Many of them just kind of, you know, oh, you know, I just did that because I was in high school. You know, then they were done. So how would you encourage them to go on?
Well, I believe there's probably a number of ways that you could encourage them. And the first thing is every young person is different. So I have heard, from my experience having a teenage daughter and working with young people, it's very hard to persuade them to do something unless they really want to do it, right? So first of all, I always have to bear that in mind. All you can do is present things to them and hope maybe it'll touch them or move them in some way. But one thing I know, like my daughter is presently, she got accepted to an arts high school here in Santa Fe. And so that was really exciting for us. And she knows in herself, because she's been painting, drawing, doing art since she was very small. And it's one of the things she's pretty good at, like some of your students, you know, like it shows promise and it's a skill. She's aware she has that ability. So one of the things as a mom that I'm always encouraging her with is, number one, I'm not trying to push her. I always tell her, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, or, you know, if you want to be a veterinarian, I will support you. So I'm not pushing you, but I have made it very clear to her also. And maybe it helps that as her mom, I'm also an artist, so she knows this. But I have encouraged her to see that it is a viable way to provide for yourself. And she knows this also because my dad, her Gaka Daniel, is also a painter. And so Gaka Daniel that is all he's ever done. He's never like really had a job, like a jobby job. He's always put food on the table by painting. So she has known, and then on her Diné side, Navajo side, her dad's mom, her grandma, is a weaver. And so she has provided for the family in that way. So it's her parents and her grandparents. So she knows through practical experience that art is actually, it's not a dreamland thing. And it's also not just a fun thing. Like I've shown you some of my fun things, but she knows actually that it's work. It is really work. And if you work hard, you can provide also for your needs, you know, and that you also can grow, you know, and meet wonderful people. You can travel. My daughter has accompanied me on many of my trips. So she's actually traveled across the whole country. And I don't say that like in a braggy way, but I mean to say that I have exposed her and shown her that it is something that you can take seriously and you can take beyond high school. And so she's already planning right now. She's already said she wants to go to the Institute of American Indian Art. She already knows what she wants to do. So I'm not trying to push her, but I know that it helps for her to know that I don't know if that would help your young people to understand and know that it is something real you can do, but it is work. And it's not all just like expression of your feelings. That's the other thing I try to impress upon young people. It is research. There's like those star quotes, for example. I consider that a form of research, you know, listening to those interviews, taking notes, sitting with it, even thinking, you know, in terms of language and phrasing, how to orchestrate those lines so that they can be combined in different ways. That's work, you know. But it's rewarding work. So I don't know if that would help your students, maybe to expose them to, and I'm certainly not the only one. There are quite a number of working Lakota artists in the area, even on Pine Ridge, you know, a number of people who work in the visual arts, painters, and, you know, in all mediums who make a living doing that. And many have gone to college as well and studied different forms. So maybe exposing them to some of those people, inviting people as speakers might help. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dear Layli, there's a question in the chat, and just again, like lots of gratitude, really, really intense and beautiful gratitude and naming of what your offering is doing for people. So I don't know if you want to read them now that you're able to.
Um, how can I connect my non-native peers? This is from, is it Astrea? Blue Coat? I wanted to ask how I can connect my non-native peers to find an understanding. Hopefully that's a good word. So we can make a difference in our community. I am really close to the Patwin tribes in Davis, and we are trying to educate the youth on our history. But how can I do that to the high school community and have them want it? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, my immediate reaction or my immediate thought is because I see, once again, I'm referring to my daughter. But one of the things that my daughter and I have talked about in her curriculum and the way that history is taught, especially with Native people, is that it's something of the past. So I think my immediate response is to discuss history and to bring things in where to impress upon the community, young people, the students, that Native people are very much present and living, and our culture is present and living, and that history is not separate from who we are now. It is a continuum. It is one thing. And unfortunately, the American mind likes to separate history from who we are today. That is the problem. That's the problem with it. And that's done out of convenience. But it is inseparable. Who we are today is because of history, right? And so I think maybe introducing history from a place of the present, here and now, might be a way to spark people's interest. In other words, for example, I'll give this an example. My daughter came home just furious, and because I think this was last year, a year or two ago, and over at this dumb elementary school, sorry, but this junior high elementary school, they were introducing Native culture, spending a week or two on it. And the way that they do it is immediately to start teaching about the Anasazi in this area. Let me tell you something. Santa Fe is surrounded by Native communities, 19 Pueblos, Apache communities, and Diné people. This is the site of the Long Walk. And the arts, the community, the activists, it's so alive here. And my daughter was like, why are we studying this crusty old, like on a dead page about Anasazi people who are quote gone, you know? Why are we doing that? Like, she wanted to have like real people come in, real people present, alive, talk about their art practices or talk about some aspect of their language or what have you, you know? I mean, that she was dying for that, and she actually gave a kind of she talked to her teacher about it, and they kind of worked on something. But so maybe start there. Think about ways to make it present and alive, if that helps. I don't know. Let's see. Thank you so much for creating this and so many other spaces for healing through art. Can you share more about the ways in which some of the young people involved with your exhibit at the Heritage Center were inspired or moved by their involvement? Do you know if any of them were spurred to further action with activism through art due to that experience? In all honesty, I don't actually know. I don't really know if they went on, if it inspired them to move on, to do other things. But one thing I will say, this reminds me of something I think is important. This again has to do with relationship. I remember when those classes, because some of the instructors brought the high school students, they brought them into this space. It was part of their class time to come and read the apology and interact, to write something on the walls. And in all honesty, I think some of the students were not that interested. I think some of them were not, they didn't really care. I think maybe they were thinking about other things at that time. And maybe they didn't really have anything to say. And so I say this with love and respect, but I got that sense because some of them wrote things on the wall that were like, I don't know, it felt kind of half-hearted, you know, like they were doing it because they were told to do it. And so, and some of them were really into it. So, you know, there was a mix. But I found when I was there, I found that I needed to start speaking up and saying, listen, you do not have to participate. You don't have to write anything on the wall if you don't want to. It's okay just to be here, just to look, to observe, you know. You don't force that relationship. There you are, right? It's like having a boyfriend and you're just forcing him to like you. You don't have to do that. No, let's not do that. It should be natural. And so I wanted the young people to also experience that freedom. We don't need to force you to participate or to make art or to engage if you're not there, if you're not interested. But even just being here, just sharing time and being with each other, hanging out, that's okay too. You know, that's better, I think, than maybe writing something or doing something that's half-hearted. And so, in that way, that's one way that I like to engage students, you know, to honor or respect where they're at. Sometimes they're just not interested, and that's okay too, you know. So.
Dear Layli, this feels like a good time to just name that next month, dear Mr. and Mrs. Bordeaux are going to be offering talks specifically connected to education, and we're going to have a youth panel of critical Lakota youth voices that I think everybody who's present today would be really, really interested in like participating. And we have young people who will be on the panel also who are here today. So I'm really glad that they're hearing everything that's being shared and asked and offered. Stay tuned for that.
I see another, we are coming close to the end, I think, of 2 hours, but I do see one question here that says, what emotions prompt your writing the most? Oh my gosh. I don't know. I have to say that I think it varies, to be honest. But one thing I do notice, I have thought about a little, because of feedback that I've gotten from other people. And then actually when I sit down and look at old work, when you talk about writing, what I have heard from others is often a sense of longing in my work. There's a continual kind of longing. And I guess I've thought about that a lot. Just because, and I'm gonna get really personal with you. Oh my God. Do I have to get personal? Well, I'm going to. Anyway, I would say I've thought about that a lot because I think like maybe there were things growing up as a young person, kind of like, I would say absences, and there was longing. There were difficulties, and things weren't all hunky-dory, and they weren't all in place. So there were some hardships in my growing up and in my family, and things with like my dad even, or what have you. But I think also this is what I do like to be open, and I do like to be honest. Maybe I'm not getting so specific tonight, but sometimes I do share more in the classroom with young people, because I do like to encourage young people, maybe to affirm with them too, you know, hey, if you have had certain absences or kind of darkness or longing, that's okay. I have had that too, you know, but it's through work, through writing and through art, that I can turn, what is it, like making lemonade out of lemons, right? I mean, all of that longing, it comes into language, and it's through language that I'm really able to come to terms. I have been able to come to terms with some of that, you know. I mean, the beauty of poetry, I think, really is specifically poetry, as opposed to writing an article or writing a paper or writing even a short story, because sometimes we plot out the story. We know how it's going to end before we finish the story. But a lot of times with a poem, we don't know how it's going to end. And often the ending is surprising even to ourselves as the poet. And so I have found that in my own work. You know, I sit down with the page and I begin writing, and I am astonished by where I'm led as I begin to put things into language, as I begin to articulate certain things. A full closure, a healing I had not expected sometimes happens, you know, in that process, like just completely. And so, yeah, maybe that's enough for now. But yeah, that's what I've noticed based on feedback. A lot of that, often that longing is there. Listen, we are getting close to the end of the time. So actually, I did have one thing I wanted all of you to maybe think about, and I would love for you to do as part of this workshop lecture thing. So you don't have to share it, but maybe I'm going to give you a little homework that you can do on your own. And this has to do with creating your sense of ethics and creating a relationship with your art. One thing I have found that has helped guide a lot of my decision making is a kind of commitment that I made to myself and my work a long time ago. So whatever comes and goes, whatever the COVID pandemic, sudden publication of my book, when my book was published, I didn't know what I was doing. It was like all of a sudden I had 1 billion emails. I was freaked out. Like, life comes and goes, right? All these waves and changes. But it has been a certain commitment that I made to myself that has helped me, really helped me stay steady, you know. And so it helps me be able to let some things go. I don't say yes to everything. And to stay, to feel like I'm not perfect, as I said, but to the best of my ability, to work with a kind of integrity and care for my poems or for my visual pieces. So I would like you as homework maybe to think about sitting down, sit down if you can, maybe even write it out, a commitment, write a commitment to yourself as an artist. Commit, like how you do, you promise your boyfriend or girlfriend you'll be faithful. It's a simple one little commitment, but wow, it makes a big difference, doesn't it? It's a huge difference. It turns things all around. So something as simple as that, like make a commitment to yourself as an artist, what you want for yourself, who you want to be as an artist. Give some thought to that. Commit something to yourself to help guide your path. Secondly, make a commitment to your art. What you promise to do in that relationship with your art, whatever it may be. And, to be honest, I have a few commitments that I have, just a couple. And those form my ethics, a kind of ethics, a way of working and walking in the world. What's most important, my values. And so maybe give that a try. I recommend that. Sitting down, and you know what? Those commitments can change. It could be a 6-month commitment. It could be a year-long commitment, right? But give it a try and see if that would help you. It's really fun to do. Yeah. So I thought I might end with that. And is there any last minute question or comment? Hi, Kylie, Luta, Dexter, everyone. Thank you.
Invite you all as you're leaving to unmute and express whatever you would like to express to dear Layli on your way out. However you want to do it. Just unmute and dip or clap or whatever. I'm full of joy and excitement and appreciation. I know you all are too.
Thank you so much. You were very inspiring and you just filled my heart with safety, love, and you just inspired me all around.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
I really enjoyed your presentation. It was wonderfully done. Kudos.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yep.
I consider this very sacred time tonight.
Oh, thank you. Who's talking?
My name is Kurt.
Oh, hi, Kurt. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Layli. I'm Kylie Red Below. I'm from the Chichasha Oyate, or Tiwahe. I just want to say thank you for providing this space. It's very healing in a way, and I enjoyed listening to you. So many, many wopilas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kylie.
Hi, my name's
Thank you so
Swecha.
much.
I'm Oglala Lakota, and I would like thank you for everything you said. It was very powerful, and I loved your poems and your poetry and everything you did. It's just really impactful for sure.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you were here. If that's it, I think maybe we can say goodnight. Yeah.
Good night, y'all. Thank you, dear Layli, so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And I wish you all a good night and happy art.
you. Safety and health to everyone and love. Thank you. Shab Khair.
You're welcome. Same to you. Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.